Okay, this video was sent by B.W. Bullfinch, and it was sent either yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. This is a minuet from First Pleyel Duo, Opus 8 for 2 violins, and this is one of the violin parts. He's playing the other violin part with his teacher. So, let's have a listen. Okay, one thing that I noticed that you do on this is, let me see if I can demonstrate what you're doing. Okay, now what's happening is when you start your down bows, you're not using very much bow at the frog, you're using maybe this much bow. And then you're trying to get to the tip of the bow at the end of your stroke. But because you're only right about the middle by the time you get to the last note, you're pulling your bow really fast to get to the tip. And what I would suggest instead of doing that is to use a little bit more bow at the frog. Then you only have to use a little bit of bow at the tip so you don't get this so you don't accidentally emphasize that note. Because musically it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put too much emphasis on that note. Where the emphasis really should be is on the downbeats. Okay. Let's see, let me go back a little bit if I can. Okay, now going into the double stops, make sure you keep your bow moving when you go into the double stops. And really what that involves is your bow mostly. Okay, as if you were just going to play try that a couple of times by itself, and then all it really is I have a video about string crossings, and the way that I do string crossings is I use my elbow to turn the bow and lead the hand. So it's my elbow that's causing the motion, or at least initiating the motion. And so when you get to this point, you're going to want to bring your elbow up before you change what your bow stroke, which direction your bow is moving. Okay, so you don't get any weird sounds like. I'm trying to help you to get to that double stop without any breaking of the sound, because then you lose some musicality if you do that. And the same thing applies there on the double stops as far as how much bow you're using. So try to use more bow at your frog and less bow, well, more bow at the beginning of your stroke and less bow at the end of your stroke. So if you're doing a down bow, more bow at the frog and less bow at the tip. And vice versa. If you're doing an up bow, less bow at the tip, or sorry, more bow at the tip and less bow at the frog. So when I'm starting this up bow, so that way you're getting a very clean and consistent sound. Okay, now for musicality, once you have the feeling of the bow and being able to use the right amount of bow in the different phrases, one thing that I would suggest, because you have the same phrase repeated twice, okay, that's the first time. Okay, think of this first passage as a whole phrase, this one phrase. So And that phrase is broken up into kind of a question and an answer. So the question is this part. Okay, and then the answer could be this. Okay, so if we're doing a phrase, typically phrases are shaped like this, like a hairpin or a rainbow, some kind of this shape. And when you start off, okay, you're right about here on that hairpin. We'll call it a hairpin, or maybe we should call it a rainbow because that's the shape. So we'll call it a rainbow. So the very first phrase takes about a quarter of that rainbow's length. So you're about a quarter of the way through. The next one is now taking up the next quarter, which happens to be at a higher position on the rainbow. Okay, so you're starting off the phrase at the beginning of the rainbow where it's the lowest. Okay, and then the next phrase you're bringing it up to another level where you're getting close to the peak of that rainbow. So in practice, you would do the first phrase softer than the second phrase, or if you want to think of it this way, you do the second phrase louder than the first phrase because it's leading to the peak of the phrase. Okay? Okay, and then that da 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 da. Now you're coming back down the phrase. Okay? So everything together. A little bit less. Okay, so also one other thing I forgot to mention is that on the first phrase you can probably use a little bit less bow to produce a little bit less sound so that you can save that amount of sound that you want for the second part of that phrase. Also notice that the way that the notes are moving, they're moving from an upward motion, da 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 dum, da 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 dum, and then coming down the phrase, the music actually facilitates you coming back down because ya da 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 dum. So it's coming back down the scale. So your natural inclination will be to kind of diminuendo a little bit, to bring the phrase back down to the end of it. So follow those notes as well. Okay, now we're descending. Okay, let's keep going. And that little stutter, you can get rid of that by using a little bit more bow at the frog when you start the bow. Okay, you may be a little bit tense when you're on the E string. Okay? It should feel just the same as when you're on the A string or the D string, only you're moving your elbow to a different spot. So if I'm playing it, or if I were to play the same thing on the A string, just move my elbow. Same for the D and the G strings. All I'm doing is I'm moving my elbow, and wherever my elbow is, my forearm just remembers, just move back and forth in this motion, and so the only thing that's changing is the angle at which my elbow is, which guides my hand and the bow onto the right string. Good sound. Okay, so remember to watch your bow and make sure that when you get to the end of the bow on the stroke, that you're not pulling it too fast. And one way that you can prevent that is by using a little bit more bow in the beginning of your stroke so that the end of the stroke has less bow to use, and therefore you don't produce that rushed or emphatic sound that you don't want in there. It needs to make musical sense, and so what I've discussed with you with the rainbow idea Put that into some practice. Also, ask your teacher about it and see what he or she thinks.